Okay, so we have a problem. This litter went from the easiest litter of puppies we've ever had to the biggest nightmare of puppies I've ever had to deal with so far. I've bottled the occasional puppy here and there, when you have 12 litters, and Piper is kind of weird because she only has 7 teats, 7 nipples to latch onto. There's been the occasional small puppy at some point gets pushed out, so we supplement it. We do things like pull all the puppies away and let that one have first dibs when it's feeding times, things like that. Those are the problems we're usually overtaking with Piper and her little puppies. If you do this game long enough, you run into problems. And that is the same with horses, cattle, dogs, cats, whatever you are breeding, whenever you're dealing with live animals, eventually the odds catch up to you and they hurt. They can be very sad. Things go wrong, sometimes very fast, and they are usually out of the control of the breeder, the farmer, the rancher, the person raising the animals. Sometimes things just go wrong. So what went wrong this litter? So up to 7 days in, everything was going great. I was weighing them twice a day. Everybody had good growth. Everybody was doing great. Piper was doing a great job. Wednesday morning, so the puppies were exactly 7 days old, everybody was doing fine. No issues. Piper was doing good. Wednesday around noonish, I got a text from the babysitter saying, "Hey, Piper threw up. Do you want me to clean it up?" I was like, No. I'll be at the house. I'll clean it up. Thanks for letting me know. Piper, during puppies, that's kind of her thing. She'll eat too fast, and then she'll throw up a little bit. Just like a little bit. It's never anything to be concerned about. I got down, and it was just undigested food everywhere. Piper could barely stand. She could barely walk. It's like, oh my goodness, we have a big problem. Didn't know what the problem was, but I knew there was a problem. And Piper was healthy in the morning. At 7 o'clock in the morning, here it is noon. She looks like she's almost dead. I mean, she's dying. We had about 4 or 5 different things going through our minds, because obviously when I saw Piper that sick, and if anybody has been following us long enough, my wife works nights, so I had to wake Mama Llama up. Just because, Piper's sick, I'm getting ready to take her to the vet, and I didn't want her to wake up and just see Piper and I are gone and not know what's going on. So it's like very much, hey, get down here, let's look at this, make sure you're on the same page, make sure she's not thinking something that I didn't think of. Maybe it was something that we could remedy here at the house. Maybe. It was not. What it turned out to be was essentially mastitis. Mastitis is, from my understanding, it's a bacteria starts growing in one of the milk ducts and the mammary glands, and it can be fatal in dogs if not treated. And treatment for mastitis is antibiotics and massaging that breast tissue. That should have done it. So Piper spent one night over at the vet school there in Columbia, Missouri, at MU. That kind of scared us because we were wondering, is Piper going to dry up? Are we bottling these puppies from here on out? Anyways, we brought her home. She was without the puppies for 24 hours, so drying up was a concern. There was a lot of bottling, supplementing feed we were doing at that point. About every 3 hours. It was essentially as if we just had a newborn child dropped in our laps. It was a lot of no sleep for my wife and I for about last 6 days leading into this. Or going into this. About 6 days going into this, we didn't really get sleep. So another thing we did, kind of change the topics a little bit, we also shipped our kids off to Grandma's house. But it was just much easier, get the kids out of the house because they want to help with the puppies. They want to feed the puppies, but they don't know how to be gentle with small animals because, they're barely 3. So there was those issues. So taking care of, feeding 11 puppies every few hours and trying to be awake and alive and supervise the 2 3-year-olds was just too much. So shipped them off to Grandma's and the aunt's house. So that's been nice, getting them out of our hair. That's been incredibly helpful because that meant we could take care of the puppies as we needed to. We could take care of Piper as we needed to. And when we weren't doing that, we were in bed and we were trying to catch up on sleep because there was several days where 1 or 2 hours of sleep was about all we were getting. So we have mastitis. That's where we're at. A couple of days into it, now we're on to a weekend, because it was about Friday night, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I noticed that there was a small wound on the breast. So what happened is so much pus had swollen that so much that it actually broke the skin and ruptured. So what I did was I put a cone on Piper. I wrapped that wound in gauze and vet wrap. So I was thinking what we would do is I'd just wait a couple more hours. Mama Llama would be home and would suture up the wound before Mama Llama went to bed. It's kind of one of the nice things is I'm the son of a veterinarian. She's been around animals her whole life. We have skill sets that the average person doesn't have in this household, which is really helpful in this situation. Otherwise, that in itself would have been another trip to the vet clinic. We were able to manage that ourselves, but the cone that Piper had on her, somehow at one period of time when she was in her crate by herself, she managed to actually pop that off. We didn't have it down tight enough. It was a cheap cone, something. But she managed to tear open those sutures, and what started as a hole smaller than the size of a quarter turned into about 4 inches long. Looked like somebody just took a knife to her. There was an exposed blood vessel that if she would have actually chewed into, probably would have killed her. Maybe not. I don't know, but it was a good-sized blood vessel. Maybe not a major artery, but it was a big one. But she essentially gave herself a mastectomy and ate all of that affected tissue. So we actually ended up loose suturing her closed, but not truly closing the wound all the way, so that way any more pus could drain out. When all of this started, I was giving the litter probably about a 30% chance of survival, and I was giving Piper about a 30% chance of survival. Hence I wasn't too excited to do YouTube videos like I normally do of showing all the puppies, showing them healthy, happy, because that wasn't where we were at. All the puppies stayed healthy, but Piper was very questionable. And when you bottle puppies, or bottle any animals, you don't always have the best results. Sometimes it goes great. Sometimes, no matter how much you try to save the animals, they just die. It's the nature of raising animals. And that's kind of where that was the mindset we were at last week, is we're going to do everything we can. And we have multiple vets in our families and in our friends' lives. I mean, we know multiple people in the medical community. And everybody we talked to about this was reassuring us that, yes, you are doing everything we could do. I was talking to a couple of friends saying, I give Piper a 30% chance of survival. And they were telling me, no, because it's you and your wife, I give her about a 75-80% chance of survival. She had more faith in us than we had in us, apparently. But it looks like she was right. At this point in time, I give Piper a 95% chance of survival, and I give the puppies a 95% chance of survival. Everybody at this point in the game is doing great. And we figured out the feeding schedule and sleep schedule, and my wife and I are normal human beings again and not feeling like we're run down and tired and dying. So everything's going good. So what we have here, because I wanted to show you this, is how we're making this work. Because there was a while she would stay up and feed the puppies at the last feeding, and before I went to bed, we would talk to each other and be like, all right, well, I'll feed them at this time. You set an alarm for this time and wake up. So as soon as the puppies, this feeding's done, I'm going to bed. And then you have to get up at such and such time to take over. And I'd be awake for the next 12 hours. And we just kind of did that on a rotation for a while. And how we communicated to ourselves, because we were going to sleep and not being up at the same time, is this whiteboard. So kind of what we're doing is, like, it is 12:20 right now. So the last time I fed the puppies was at 10, and I finished at 11. It takes one person about an hour to feed 11 puppies. They're eating about 1 to 2 ounces as of right now. We started off feeding them only about a half an ounce. We're now up to, some of them are eating 2 ounces, and it's like, okay, I'm cutting you off because you're eating way too much, way too fast. So there's a lot of resources out there if you find yourself in a bottle feeding a puppy situation that tells you how much to feed and how many hours to feed them at every different age. So use those. Don't go off of money, but I'm very much looking at the puppies, figuring out what they need for as they go, and I just as I see how they're doing. If they're doing really well, we'll do this. We can cut back the feedings a little bit if they're getting plenty of mommy time. But so we're bottle feeding them, and I'm bottle feeding them about every 8 hours because at this point in the game, bottle feeding is supplementary. Piper is now down 3 nipples, and she's got the vet wrap on, so she can't be left with the puppies unattended. So we can put her in there a lot, but when she says she's done feeding them, we have to lock her up with the cone on, with the t-shirt on, with the bandage on. It's a kind of a mess. It's kind of an ordeal. But it's much better, in our opinion, for them to eat her milk versus a formula milk. And we'll touch on the formulas here in a minute. Our feeding them. Fed them at 10, finished at 11. So 8 hours from the time I started is 1800. So 6 p.m. is the next time I have to feed them. But 6 a.m. I put Piper in. 9 a.m. we put Piper in. At 12 we put Piper in. So she's in there for literally as long as she wants. When she gets up and goes to get a drink of water or get some food, because again we still have that stuff provided for her, she always has free range to food and water. At that point, then it's, all right, we're going to take you away for an hour or two, and about every 3 hours, we're putting her in. So, and then the next feeding's at 1500. The reason we're keeping this on this whiteboard is it's a very easy thing for us to change. It is kind of what it is. If we're a little late on a feeding, then the next person that goes to feed Piper knows. If I go to bed and my wife is up and about, she can just look at this and see, oh, well, last time they were fed was at this time. They're all crying. Maybe it's not the time for the next feeding, but since they're all crying, we'll feed them an hour or two early. So this isn't fixed in stone. This isn't like, we're not super rigid on this. This is kind of approximations. If we see something we don't like, if the puppies are looking really skinny or crying or whatever, then we'll feed them. But this kind of gives us an idea of where we're at. We're also still weighing them twice a day. In that same notebook, we're also writing down what the exact time we feed the puppy, each individual puppy, and exactly how much they get. Well, I say exactly. Anybody that's dealt with baby bottles knows it has 1 to 5 ounces listed on each bottle. But how accurate is that? And once they start getting air bubbles in it and you're holding it up and like 1 ounce of it is nothing but air bubbles and trying to figure out where that line stops, it's not an exact science. But it gives us a good approximation of, okay, they ate about 1.5 ounces, they ate 1 3/4 ounces, they ate 2 ounces, they only ate 3/4 of an ounce. There for a while, anybody that didn't eat, I also would write problem puppies and I would list every puppy that I felt didn't eat enough. If one puppy only ate 1/2 ounce in a feeding, but yesterday was eating 1 to 2 ounces, I'd write it on the board. Now, the reason I did that was so next time we fed them, we'd know that's the puppies we need to pay most attention to. And if they ate 1 to 2 ounces next feeding, no longer a problem puppy. And that's where we've been. If a puppy was slowly tapering off on how much it was eating, then we would know we'd have another problem on our hands. We haven't had that. Fingers crossed. Everything's going well at this point. So yeah, at this point, we've been very hesitant on doing a lot of advertisements. We've been a lot of hesitant on promoting this litter of puppies because I wasn't convinced that they weren't all going to die. At this point in the game, I am convinced they're all going to be just fine. I see no reason why every puppy isn't going to grow up to be a healthy, smart, wonderful puppy. The problem is solely related to it is a lot of work on us. Typically speaking, the first month of having puppies is mama dog takes care of them. You might have to change the papers a little bit, but realistically, mama dog for the first several weeks cleans up after them, feeds them, takes care of them, does everything for you. And all you have to do is feed your dog. That's it. This litter, we're cleaning the papers, we're stimulating the puppies after feedings because that's how they pee and poop, is that licking sensation. It's really gross. But that's what we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of that. Piper's done some, but we're doing a lot of that. It's gross. We've been changing the papers 4 or 5 times a day because Piper's not in there to clean them up all the time. We're waking up at all hours of the day to bottle them and feed them. So this has been an incredibly hard litter for us as the breeders. Luckily, my wife and I have been able to do it together. When we both feed them, it takes 30 minutes to feed all 11 puppies. When it's just me, it takes a solid hour. If I'm asleep and my wife's doing it, I'm assuming it takes her a solid hour too. At least it says so on the whiteboard, because I don't know, I'm asleep. So that's kind of where we're at.
Puppy out?
I will. Which one are we going to feed? They're all hungry? Alright, pick one. Which one are we going to feed first? We'll grab one of the ones trying to climb out. Sure, pick him up. Let's feed him. Oh, thank you.
Hey, baby.
Oh, this one's honey?
I honey, that's honey.
Oh, this is puppy honey?
Yeah.
Okay.
I honey.
You're honey too?
Yeah.
Oh. So this puppy needs to be named honey too?
Yeah. Poor puppy. Oh, that's full.
You think this one's full?
Yeah, see?
Okay.
It's got tummy full.
Alright. Which one are we going to feed next?
That
This one?
Yeah, baby gotta go.
Gotta be gentle. Yes, we do.